Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. This is my channel and my husband's channel. I make Wotv videos and my husband makes Genshin videos. If you like Genshin, please check out his content. So in today's video, I'm going to share a few simple rules or tips about team composition for beginners this is tips that I made or how I would approach team compositions. Everyone approached this differently, and it's a concept that's pretty difficult to explain. So I will try to explain this in the simplest way I can, and hopefully it can help you decide which direction to take. So number one, or the number one tip or rule that I have, is have a true DPS to lead your team. In any RPG game, the DPS in the team is anyone who can dish out like the most damage. But in Wotv, I would say it's divided into two. So one is a DPS that can take out tanks easily, or I would call this type of DPS like the true DPS, and the other one is the unit or the DPS which cannot take out tanks easily, which is the support DPS. I call them the support DPS. So there's true DPS and there's support DPS. In other terms, the true DPS is any unit with def or SPR piercing, and the other one, or the support DPS, are DPSs without def, SPR, or attack res piercing, which would have a harder time leading, primarily because they can be easily mitigated by defense stacking. If you're not familiar what defense stacking is, you can check out a video that I will put in the link where I discuss how defense works and how it could be OP compared to focusing on attack strategies before if you don't have def or unit attack resistance piercing. So yeah. So here is a tier list. I will be putting a tier list over here of true DPSs currently in the game. In the future, there's going to be a lot more of those as the developer adjusts older characters to be more competitive and they release more characters with defense piercing. But as of now, here's what they are. Eventually, I think everyone will have some sort of def piercing. As you can see, I have also tiered the DPSs and stated my reasons as to why they're placed that way, as some true DPSs have greater DPS potential than others due to the vision cards that support them, or they have special skills that help them stand above others, or they have overall advantage of the units currently released. By skills that have advantage or put them above others, I would say this is like Immortal Spirit or Re-Raise, or any skill that can cancel Immortal Spirit, Re-Raise, remove barriers, something along those lines. So once you've selected a true DPS to lead your team, it is now time to select the supporting cast members, which leads us to the second rule, which always have someone to chain with your main DPS or your true DPS. If you haven't skipped the tutorial of the game, like the tutorial quests or guides, you would know about chaining, where similar attack types or elements that hit a single target unit consecutively would yield more damage. Just to quickly explain how it works, if you have a slash unit that deals 100 damage, the next slash unit will deal 20% more damage towards the target, or at least that's what I read on Reddit. I'm not really sure what the multiplier is, but that's what they say. I haven't really experimented on damage, but for sure it would deal more damage. So if you have a true slash DPS, let's say like super stern, you may want to pick a slash DPS to chain with. Either it's also a true DPS or a supporting one. Like it's like super stern and Dwayne versus super stern and Orlando. That kind of difference. Another option is to chain through elements, like how I do it with Ffbe and Halloween Buryu, who both does earth damage and can have elemental earth chain. The best option would be if you can chain both the attack type and both the element. A prime example, as I've said earlier, is Super Stern and Dwayne, who I both consider as true DPS and can both deliver slash and dark damage. Another good thing would be chaining, as I've said, chaining elements and if you chain elements and attack types, it would be more beneficial to your party because you will benefit from vision cards in the future, as Wotv or the developers is pushing for mono element teams or mono attack teams. Just a note though, having mono element and mono attack type teams also means that you will be easier to counter as well, so keep that in mind. What do I mean? So if you build like a mono slash team, and let's say let's just, to make things simple, we don't have like slash piercing or anything like that. You can be easily mitigated by, let's say, a whisper that has 100% slash resist, or if you build a mono missile team, you can be mitigated by like a Thancred that has 100% missile resist and you can only do 1 damage. There's a thing like that. So there. So we're done with rules number 1 and 2. Now we have to move on to a more complicated rule or tip. I call this the 1, 2, 3 or the 2, 1 rule. This is complicated and quite lengthy because this is the part where jobs and skills come to play and where there are a lot of small details that needs to be discussed. If you've played an RPG long enough, you would be familiar, or at least you have it as a second nature to know about the holy triad of RPGs, or the Holy Trinity. This is the RPG roles of DPS, support, tank. You would have memorized it by now. Where the DPS gives the most damage, the tank takes the most damage, and the support heals and buffs their allies. In the start, or at the start, in Wotv, this was the classic team composition. This is I call this team composition the 1, 2, 3. It's because you have the 3 roles in one team comp. This was the classic team composition. If most of you might remember, if you're an old player and you're watching this, most of you might remember the Orlando, Engelbert, Ayaka team composition, a solid team foundation in the beginning that is proven to be the best of the best. And as I've said, this combination follows the 1, 2, 3 rule, where you have all the 3 different roles in one team comp. And this still also follows the 2 previous rules that I've mentioned before, like Orlando and Engelbert can still like slash chain, and Orlando leads a team. This is the simplest example, but times are different now. In the past era where tanks lead the team, now it's quite different, where offense is the best defense in a sense. So now we move on to the 2-1 rule. The 2-1 rule states that you can have 2 of the same type and 1 different type. But remember, in our 2 previous tips before, you always have to have a true DPS to lead your team, your strongest DPS, if you don't have like true DPS. That means the first slot of the 2-1 rule will always be occupied by your lead DPS. So the second type will also be another DPS in the 2-1 rule. Based on the 2-1 rule, it's either another DPS that can chain, and the other type can either be a tank or healer depending on what you need that can chain with your lead DPS. The possible combinations with 2-1 rule are basically DPS tank or DPS support, combining all of the tips and the rules together. But it's also possible to do like tank DPS or support DPS, but I will explain more that later. But the most ideal right now is like DPS tank and DPS support. So yeah, I've placed some examples of teams that follow the 2-1 rule, and I guess the most popular one right now would be the Monodark team, the Dwayne, Super Stern, and Kane combo that follows the chaining rule for both Slash and Dark Chain. And honestly, this team combo is so popular just because it's so easy to go through teams with this team, because they are almost all of them are true DPS. Before we delve into more murky waters, I want to set a foundation for the next discussion. Although the definition of what a support and tank is quite clear-cut, I would like to set my own criteria of what a tank is for Wotv and what a support is. So let's start. A tank can be delegated into 2 jobs. Almost anyone with a paladin and spellblade role can beat a tank to some extent, but I still have 3 criteria to consider if a unit is a tank, and it has to pass all 3 to be a true tank. The first one being the high amount of def, SPR, attack resistance, and HP. Usually it's when a unit has a def stat master ability. By def stat master ability, they have to have a defense related master ability, like either a type of resistance or a additional def or SPR. That is my first criteria. The second criteria is that they have the important abilities. Do they have barriers or saintly wall or magic barrier or magic resistance up? Do they have hate generation abilities like taunting blade? Do they have special abilities like immortal spirit? So for me, they have to have at least 2 of these abilities for me to call them like a true tank. So they have to pass the first criteria and the second criteria. And the last criteria is more of like for me to know what type of tank they are. Are they a DPS tank, or do they buff themselves like they can only buff themselves like a pure tank, or do they have buffs for other units or deal devastating status ailment effects to others? This last criteria will make more sense later on. It's more of me figuring out are they leaning more on support, or are they pure tank, or are they DPS? We'll discuss that later. How about support? These are units that can deliver heals, buffs, and enemy debuffs. The high tier supports are White Mage and Time Mage, and for the purpose of making this video simple, I would say at this point in time, they are the only support that matters. If I have to delve into every support role, we will be taking more time than we need to. So units that are White and Time Mage main job, or even have this subs, instantly becomes like high tier. and a giant but, only if they have certain skills. Full life, a skill that reincarnates a unit at full health, and quicken, a skill that gives a unit an instant turn, and holy, a guaranteed hit light magic damage skill, makes anyone a decent support or DPS. Just having one of these three instantly raises the unit values astronomically. So haste and heals are also good support abilities. Some are good but not as godly as the three mentioned, but of course heals are always important. In the future, we will have re-raise, and that is another godly skill, but so far this is specific to Yuna. So like most likely they will have other units that might have re-raise, who knows. So yeah, these are the few simple things you need to note about support. I won't go much into detail because this is just gonna take forever. So now we're done with the easy part and laying the foundation. We're familiar with the 1, 2, 3 and the 2, 1 rule, but in What If we can actually mix this up. Now we talk about hybrids. These are units that can perform 2 roles or even all 3, but whether or not they shine depends on their skill sets and artificial intelligence, and the unit's artificial intelligence and how it makes decisions. An example of a non-hybrid unit is Orlando. He is a non-hybrid unit because of his main job and sub-jobs. He has a main job Sword Saint and a sub-job Samurai and Knight. He falls purely into offense, and another example would be Ruin Knight Stern with Knight of Ruin, Samurai, and Soldier job combination. So you can't see an ounce of support or some sort of tankiness to these. Although Knight is kind of like right in the middle of tanky and support, but yeah, mostly they're purely offense unit. So that's the pure ones. Let's talk about the hybrids. A prime example of a hybrid are arithmeticians. They can perform both DPS and support role, and which role they prioritize depends on their AI. Usually you can tell by their main job almost all the time whether a unit will almost all the time, because a unit will prioritize their main job's ability than their sub jobs. That's what makes arithmeticians so good, because they can perform both DPS and support role with their main job's kit. So their AI tends to do the right things at the right time because they prioritize both arithmeticians DPS and arithmeticians heals, which both have a gigantic area of effect. So I had to relocate because my daughter is going to sleep in the room. So yeah, I had to go somewhere else to do some talking. Another example of a hybrid would be Agrias, because Agrias is good at both tanking and supporting, in the sense that she deals negative status ailments or status ailments to your enemies. Remember what I said about tanks earlier, that the third criteria, I wanted to know whether they do DPS or they do support, which is buffing others and then dealing status ailments. Agrias is the latter and Dwayne is the former. Dwayne is a DPS, a tank DPS, and Agrias is a tank support type. And you can know that by their main jobs actually. So Dwayne is an offense focused tank and Agrias is a support focused tank. So it it's in their main jobs kit. When you see their main job has buffs and then has tanking abilities, then most likely they're a hybrid of a sorts. Another hybrid I would say would be Ffbe. Ffbe is the staff mage job both has DPS and tanking abilities, just because she has a barrier in her kit and a def passive in her kit. So the staff mage has barrier ability and DPS ability in its kit, and the AI prioritizes that both. That's why she performs that. That's why she's good at taking damage and dealing damage, because it's in her main job kit. But she also has white mage sub job. This is her white mage sub job is prioritized less, so she's not a good support, but she can do support to some extent. But if she can kill something, she's gonna kill something first before killing your teammates, because that's what she's built for. Another prime example of hybrid is Gilgamesh. He buffs and he's a DPS support. His main job gives him a lot of buffs, so it makes him a bit tanky and gives him a lot of speed, but at the same time his sub jobs buffs his time mage sub job with quicken, makes him a high tier support in live PvP, and he does damage as well. So yeah, those are the examples of hybrid, and you put them in your team. They could do one or more roles, but it all depends on their AI, their main job, because what I've said, the AI prioritizes the main jobs over the sub jobs, and that somehow determines what they are. And that, I guess, is my end discussion of roles. And I think I will be placing sample like compositions of hybrids here on and what roles each unit can have, or what roles do they belong to. I'll put, you can pause the video if you want, and I'll put them over there. So yeah, have a look. So the final tip that I have for everyone would be always check the map, whether what team compositions will be good for certain maps. Usually they have a hint like missile attack up, or missile attack up, or like slash attack up, area resistance up. So yeah, those are one of the deciding factors, and maybe just work with what you have and start building. You can base it on the element or base it on the attack type. Just take things slow, and first and foremost, enjoy the game. And yeah, I guess that's all my tips. I can show you some demo reels of my team comps. It's not that great. I mean, they're okay, but I don't have like the shiny new ones, and I just get by with what I have. So I guess that's it. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and you can leave a comment if you want, and stay tuned for more videos.